So good afternoon. Happy lunch. Happy Tuesday. Happy Juneteenth month. I am going to give everybody just a few moments to come on in here. I am turning my ringer off so that I don't disturb anybody. And I'm going to share this link in a couple of different places in hopes that you all will definitely tune in to what I feel is a very important conversation. So, of course, always when I have these conversations, I encourage conversation, your own opinions and thoughts, your feedback. Please, by all means, hit the share button so that other people can tune in to these conversations as well. And please also hit the subscribe button in order to subscribe to the YouTube channel where I continue these conversations going and where you can go back and see the replays. And so I hope that you all will find some relevance in today's conversation and not only find relevance in it, but also share the conversations that we're having with others who can use these types of meaningful conversations. So there was a topic that has really just been marinating on my spirit since we've been talking about Juneteenth. And I will say that prior to one of the bigger incidents that happened this month, I was already thinking about just how important Juneteenth has been and how Juneteenth has already started to change since it has become quote unquote recognized on a national platform. And for me, I was thinking to myself, I first thought about, but first let me start by sharing with people. I think it's really important to share this that I am not a person who is new to Juneteenth. So I'm not a person who just started learning about Juneteenth last year or the year before or a couple of years ago or even, back in college. I have known about Juneteenth for a very long time. And I have known about Juneteenth for a long time because many of you all may know, but some of you may not. My father's family is actually from Texas. Okay. So, good afternoon, Miss Yvonne. My father's family is actually from Texas. And my grandmother, who is named Lottie Silas, she has always taught me about Juneteenth ever since I was a little girl. So Juneteenth is not a new thing to me. Juneteenth has been taught to me all of my life. Every time Juneteenth came around, my grandmother, even if it was just something small, because for a while my grandmother actually moved to Louisiana and was over in DeRidder where I was growing up. So even if it was just something small and she wasn't near her family, my grandmother always cooked a holiday meal on Juneteenth. And she would come on, she would say, come over, I cooked a meal for Juneteenth and, let's celebrate and all these types of things. And she had always taught me that it was the day that they received message that enslavement had ended in Texas. So I've been familiar with Juneteenth pretty much since I was a little girl. And I think that was what made it very, very important to me, was that I recognized that Juneteenth was not something everybody celebrated, that it was something that was unique to Texas, and especially my Texas family, and that I got to enjoy that with my grandmother. And so as I got older, and Juneteenth started becoming more popular, I did enjoy sharing a story about Juneteenth more with people. But that thing has changed even more because, as we know, within recent years, the conversation regarding Juneteenth has become even bigger. And then back in June of 2021, which was last year, Juneteenth actually became a national holiday, with several workplaces that do things like celebrate Juneteenth on the clock or actually give people the day off for Juneteenth. Here in the state of Louisiana, it is recognized as a state holiday. So some businesses do close for it. So Juneteenth has been very, in recent years, it's become a very notable holiday. But there are some things that still, bother me about this, right? Because with the rise of conversations about Juneteenth, on the opposite end of that, we are still having these big debates in schools about things like quote unquote critical race theory, which there's not really even anything called critical race theory. The truth is just that there are arguments about how much of the truth about America's history do we want to incorporate into school curriculum. That's what the argument really is about. And so, especially for me, all year long, I think about how frustrated I feel that we proclaim here in the United States that we celebrate Juneteenth, but then there is this conflict going on in our educational system about how much of the truth needs to be told about the enslavement experience and other experiences in this country. It's a bit of a contradiction. And so, one of the other things that kind of sticks out in my mind about this is how many people who are celebrating Juneteenth actually know what Juneteenth is and what Juneteenth involved. There are a lot of people who know, they'll say, oh, it celebrates the end of slavery. They'll say that part, but they have no idea what amount of work had to be done to finally get to this point, nor do they fully understand that the announcement of slavery ending was only the beginning of the journey for Black people in America. Okay. And so that is what made me start to ponder within my mind, how is it that we preserve the authenticity of Juneteenth? The other component of that came down to the fact that I've noticed that, so there are a couple of different things we saw. There was the poster board that was put up in Arkansas where there was this, like, this all white group of people who were celebrating Juneteenth. Now, the proceeds they had were supposed to be going to Black or diverse organizations, yet the billboard they projected had no reflection of such diversity. It did not really even show an indication that these people actually understood what Juneteenth was about. The other component of that was that a few weeks ago, we know that Walmart rolled out some Juneteenth ice cream, and those flavors, or that flavor was supposed to be, what was it, cheesecake and red velvet, which we know red velvet is pretty popular among the Black community. And it was supposed to be to commemorate Juneteenth as well. And there was a lot of outcry from the Black community simply because many of us have had the same concerns. What we do not want to see is the blood, sweat, and tears and the horrific experience of our ancestors become a marketing ploy. And there were some very important things that I heard other people say as well. When I started hearing people say things like, do you see foods out there that are made to market to, in commemoration of the Holocaust? Do they make, foods that market that? Are they out here creating lines of T-shirts? Are they doing so? Very important conversations that came out to look at these two issues side by side. And the truth is that it's not a marketing ploy. It's not. It's and the experiences of Black people through the enslavement period should not be a marketing ploy in this country. But per usual, Black pain is marketed because it appears that Black pain is profitable, because we are people who know how to turn pain into joy, or know how to look at pain and always remember um the good things that our people also did in the midst of that, if that makes sense. And so I'm going to dig further into why that is still problematic, because that is something that is part of the uniqueness of Black people, but that still does not mean that mainstream markets have the right to then make money off of experiences that are rooted in Black pain. So that was the other component. The third part being that there was actually a white man who tried to trademark the word Juneteenth, so that then Black folks we would not have even been able to have shirts that say Juneteenth without having some type of permission, or possibly paying something or something like that to celebrate Juneteenth. So it was really going to restrict our ability to celebrate Juneteenth. And it was just really ironic that we would have to go through such a thing whenever the whole basis behind the history of the holiday is about the enslavement experiences of Black people in this country. So there were several things that were happening within the media that made me say there has to be a conversation about the importance of maintaining the authenticity of Juneteenth, while being inclusive and diverse. There's a Juneteenth water. Who has a Juneteenth water, Miss Patricia? So I'm going to show you guys some of the comments we have coming in. There's apparently somebody who has come out with the Juneteenth water. And I want you guys to please share these comments and let me know what's going on, because I want to talk about this. So let me start at the beginning. So for those who don't know, the celebration of Juneteenth is really about the day whenever soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, to formally announce that the Civil War was over and enslaved Black people were now free. And that took place on June 19th in 1865. Hence, June 19th is how we got Juneteenth, which, you know, even the name of Juneteenth is a part of the beauty of Black vernacular. You know what I'm saying? It's even that is a part of the beauty of Black vernacular. So that is a very important part of understanding that. That's where the term Juneteenth came from. And we also know that, you know, the Civil War itself, and I think that that's what comes about as a problem to me. There are a lot of people who are looking at Juneteenth as just this singular event, that singular day when the announcement was made. Whenever, though that day was very significant because it supposedly, and we'll talk about why I say the word supposedly, okay, signified the official end of enslavement in the United States. It was much bigger than that. It was much bigger than just that moment to make that announcement. There had been a war that had ensued since I think it was 1861, and that war was the reason that this was necessary. Vaseline has marketed a jar with Black images on it. So, and that's, so there we go. Continue talking. Continue talking. And so when we talk about the fact that when we say Juneteenth is not just singularly about that day. It's about the fact that there was a whole war that surrounded this to get to this point that went on for years. It's about the fact that there were other events throughout this war period. There was the loss of lives, the so many loss of lives that can never be counted. It was about, honestly, the collapse of even further of the infrastructure of the South that was based on enslavement, in particular in Mississippi. I don't know how many of you all follow me on TikTok. I have shared this information on Facebook and I think Instagram before, but I released the video and people continue to share this information now. But I actually was the first person to release a video on TikTok about the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi, where when the war ended in Natchez, um, approximately 80,000 people that had been enslaved were freed. Well, they had nowhere to go, so they all came down to the Mississippi River. And there was actually no real plan. There was no exit plan. There was no transportation plan for these people to actually go, to have a place to go once they were freed. And as a result, Union soldiers basically turned it almost into like a concentration camp, and they dug out these deep trenches, and people were sick. They died from malaria. There was abuse going on. It was just a horrible situation with no action plan, no game plan. Uh, People who were once enslaved but were now free and thought that they were on the other side of the war ended up dying. They were forced to bury their own people just by throwing them down in the pits. They were starving. There was no food. It was a horrible experience. So when people talk about Juneteenth, and I could go further into that, but if you have been following this page, you know that I actually did an interview on the Devil's Punch Bowl earlier last year with Miss Dorita Frazier and her father. So my advice is for you to go back and check out that interview where we go more in depth, or you can go to my YouTube channel where I post those videos, or go to my TikTok. But the reason I'm saying that is because people look at the Juneteenth holiday as being just that singular moment. But the Juneteenth holiday is about the entire war that went on. It was about the millions of Black people who were enslaved. It was about millions of my ancestors who suffered in this country, and who built this country from the bottom up, including the White House. And so to watch it become a marketable holiday off the strength of people seeing the opportunity to make money is very problematic, and for me was very upsetting. And this is the other component about this. Black people have been celebrating Juneteenth in various cities around the country, but especially in the state of Texas for a very long time. Okay. And so you have a lot of Black folks who have used that commemorative time to, in fact, sell memorabilia, to sell food, to sell plates, to increase Black revenue. And so you may have some people who say, well, why is it okay for Black people to sell, but it's not okay for mainstream to sell? Well, the first reason is because the mainstream market has been making a profit in America. The mainstream market is actually the white American market, and it's been making profits in America since they first got here, including off the backs of Black enslaved people. That's how we got to this point. That's how we got to Juneteenth. So that's the first thing. You don't get to enslave people, strip them of everything, and then turn around and make money off their pain. Period. This country has done that for far too long. This country has made money off the pain of Black people for far too long. And this is a moment when we get to say, not anymore. The second part is, if we continue to talk about the wealth gap that exists in this country, I believe that the last one I read was that the average income for a Black household was just over 17,000, while the average income for a white household was like 170,000. So that is a ginormous difference, right? And so how can we say in this country that we are working toward reducing the wealth gap or closing the wealth gap, but at the same time we are allowing the mainstream market to prostitute out the culture of the minority people who are experiencing the oppressive behavior. It doesn't make sense. And it goes into every single system that we deal with in America, right? We talk about the fact that Black women are the highest educated sector, yet we get paid at the bottom of the totem pole. If we talk about things like social media, where the average pay for Black creatives is significantly lower than that of white creatives, yet Black creatives are the ones who create the trends, who create the music, who set the tone, who make social media what it is, but we're still struggling to get pay and recognition. I'll tell my own personal story. I've been on TikTok for about a year now, and there are people who get on there and tell Black stories just like I do. And they're being creatives, white creatives, who tell stories and don't tell the same kind of stories I do because I tend to find very unique ones. But we all talk about Black stories, Black history, Black culture. Their accounts are booming. We started this at the same time. 400,000 followers, and I'm over here struggling at 30,000 followers because I'm a Black creative telling these stories. Meanwhile, a white creative telling my people's story gets more traction than I do. So I say that to say this, and all of that equates money, even in the internet world, it equates money. Once again, you are seeing people who are generating a profit off the story and pain of the Black experience. And so when it comes to Juneteenth, it's even more personal because how is it that we can take a day that is about enslavement of Black people and then make room for people to make money off of the things that we have experienced? Such a painful past, such a commemorative past, such a day that honestly I feel we have not taken the time to yet really sit and mourn the loss of lives that happened between the start of the war and the end of the war. And so I think it's extremely important that we begin to embark on conversations that say, how is it that we support inclusion and diversity while also preserving the authenticity of this holiday? And I'm going to specifically answer that question in just a minute. I'm going to read Miss Patricia Turner's comment. Indianapolis Children's Museum has the watermelon salad packages in the grocery stores in that area. She said she's going to try to send me some images and those to me, and I'm going to show those to y'all. And that's really interesting, you guys. And so it's exactly what we're saying when we talk about people doing things. And this is the thing. Because even when we go back and we talk about the experience of what happened with Walmart, and I put out an essay about this. I said this was the interesting thing about it. I said Walmart is one of the largest corporations probably in the world. And it's based right in Bentonville, Arkansas, right here above me. I'm here in Louisiana. It's based right out of Bentonville, Arkansas, in the South. The home of Walmart was actually part of the Confederacy. It was part of the Deep South. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yeah, Walmart, because when you talk about Walmart, people will say things like, oh, well, that's a no-name brand. Great Value is not no-name brand. That is Walmart's brand, okay? Sam's Choice and Great Value is Walmart's brand. So it's actually a brand, and that's what you need to understand. So what Walmart did was not only were they getting paid, they were double dipping off the backs of Black stories, okay, via a Confederacy state. So I don't know how much more ironic it can be than that, okay? So they were going to get paid as Great Value. It was also their store. And ironically, Arkansas was included as one of the Confederate states. I don't know how much more ironic that situation can be. And so that's one of the reasons that it definitely triggered me. Like, how dare you do such a thing? And this was the other part about it. There is actually a Black line of ice cream, and I shared that with you guys. I put out the picture of Creamalicious, the story. You guys actually shared that quite a bit. Thank you for doing that. But Creamalicious ice cream, which is a Black brand ice cream, that is marketed right there in Walmart. It's right there in Walmart. It's right there at Target. So my conversation regarding that was that Walmart itself has products in there because they carry some of the same products as Target. Now, they may not be doing the same type of work and effort that Target is doing to make it known to you when they have Black creatives doing stuff, when they have Black companies actually doing products, but Walmart has them there, and that's the problem. But Walmart could have run a campaign where they highlighted the Black businesses that are within their store. And look, if there are a lot of them, they can choose 10 a year. They can choose 10 a year and say, this year, these are our 10 businesses we're highlighting as a part of the Juneteenth celebration. But Walmart itself rarely gives back. And people will say, well, Walmart will give you money. You guys, we're not talking about behind the scenes money. We're not talking about those small checks. We're talking about actually using the platform that they have to actually boost people so that they are making an active contribution to reducing the wealth gap. Walmart is going to get paid regardless. Every time a Creamalicious ice cream paint is bought via Walmart, Walmart gets paid. Okay? Creamalicious is not housing her products in Walmart for free. Walmart gets paid just like she'll get paid. So it does not hurt them in any way. They will not lose. As a matter of fact, they might increase profit by saying these are the Black products that we are carrying, or Black trendsetters, or even theming it in some type of creative way, that they are highlighting these people and to push these products. I don't care what people say. The only way that we are going to be able to close the wealth gap in this country is by ensuring that Black businesses are acknowledged. Black businesses are given the resources. Black businesses are given the opportunities that they need to make the sales. And so until this happens in this country, it makes me question, are we truly interested in acknowledging what Juneteenth is about? Are we truly interested in ensuring that Black people and other minorities are getting fair opportunities? Are we truly serious about inclusion and diversity? Or are we just doing this as public conversation to look like we're doing it, but the work is not really within the heart? The work is not really within the heart. Miss Fanyana Live says, that's true. We were talking about the social media. White creatives get paid $150,000 to $250,000 per post. And this was an article that came out last year. All top 7 TikTokers earned were white and on the Forbes list last year. Yet, if you go look on there, you look, you can think about it. Last year they just had what a couple of weeks ago. That hey baby, with the drum majors, y'all, with drum majors, the baseline of historically Black colleges and universities. I remember being a little girl watching the Bayou Classic on TV, and the main event, we might have liked the game, but the main event was the band, right? And the drum major and that rock. That's what we waited for. Just a few months ago, that went viral on social media. How many Black creatives saw checks of $150,000 behind that trend that was going all over the world? How many? You guys, we didn't even know. I was about to say Hurricane Chris, who was right here from Louisiana. I didn't even know Hurricane Chris was still rapping. But apparently he has an audio sound. You guys, I found out that Hurricane Chris had a new song because I heard the sound trending on TikTok. Do you see what I'm saying? So we set the trend over and over and over and over and over again in this country. But we are still struggling to close this wealth gap. And so when we come around to holidays like Juneteenth, it is extremely important that we preserve the authenticity of that holiday and that we create a sense of accountability. And so you may be saying, well, how do we preserve the authenticity of that holiday? Number one is that we don't water down the truth about Juneteenth by doing things like changing the name of it. And I don't mean anything to anybody, but I know for sure, and I don't even think this was a local thing, but because I've seen it everywhere. But one of the things this year for Juneteenth is quote unquote Freedom Day. I saw this on Canva. So I think that that's the national thing that they're going, which is Freedom Day, right? So the first thing is to rename it. And by renaming it, we automatically start to take away from the force of the actual name, Juneteenth. This is not Freedom Day. Now, it is the day that the last official state received notification, but it wasn't quote unquote Freedom Day. It's Juneteenth. So, number one, by stripping away that name, we then start to strip away the authenticity of that thing. Number two, we must continue to allow the story of Juneteenth to be the forefront of every celebration. We must continue to allow the story of Juneteenth to be at the forefront of every celebration. Not the food, not the clothes, not turning up, and not a day off. It needs to be at the forefront of every celebration. You guys, and I will be doing this for Juneteenth as well this year. And I will probably go, I think I will probably go ahead and set up a virtual prayer for us this week for Juneteenth. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that probably on Friday. I'll do that. But for Black History Month, at the beginning of every Black History Month, I actually I do an independent prayer where I mourn for my ancestors. All of the losses that they experienced, all of the pain that they went through, all of the stories that are untold. I mourn for them. So I pray and I just spend my time crying and asking God to just cleanse me of the pain that I feel for my ancestors, and asking Him for clarity in regards to how I must continue to move forward in sharing their stories and living as a reflection of who they would want me to be. I start every Black History Month like that. It's extremely important to me. I think I will do the same thing this year, and perhaps I'll do it for Juneteenth. That's going to be kind of fast, but maybe this Friday morning I'll come online and do the same thing with you guys and do a moment of silence for Juneteenth, because I believe that that's one of the ways that we can ensure that we also keep that authenticity there. The next way that we keep that authenticity there is by keeping that story at the forefront of the activities that we do, and making those activities learning experiences. Celebratory experiences are all awesome, but making sure that we are having those learning lessons incorporated as well is always important. Artwork is important. Discussions and panel sessions are important. Um, Actual lectures are important for our children, little worksheet packets, all of those are important. So making sure that we are actually keeping that lesson visible for our kids to learn. Watching videos are important. You can find a lot on YouTube, things like that, so that they always know. The next way that we keep that authenticity important and keep it inclusive is by letting people know that they're absolutely welcome. I think that one of the problems that we tend to have within the Black community, and I'll say that today, is that we often feel uncomfortable allowing our Blackness to fully exist in non-Black spaces, or in diverse groups where there may be other races present. And this is because for so long we were taught that we had to dial down our Blackness in order to be accepted. We had to change our hair, we had to change how we dressed, we had to change our dialect, we had to change, we had to change everything about ourselves in order to be accepted socially. And so we are in an era now where I would like for us to begin to move away from feeling as if we have to continue to strip ourselves of authenticity in order to be accepted. And so when we talk about inviting all people out to celebrate Juneteenth, you do not have to change the title. You don't have to change the colors. You don't have to change the subject matter. People need to hear these stories, especially our white brothers and sisters, our white counterparts. They need to hear these stories as well, because many of them have not heard the full truth behind Juneteenth. Many of them have not heard about slavery. They have not heard community stories. They have not heard many of their own ancestor stories. And so those who are not ready to receive it yet won't be there. But those who understand what Juneteenth is will show up regardless. And so we've got to get to the point where we're no longer watering down the event, but allowing Juneteenth to exist in its full capacity and to be exactly what Juneteenth is, which is a day that commemorates the last day of enslavement, or the last state was notified that enslavement was over. And so when we allow Juneteenth to exist in its full spectrum and invite people to celebrate that for what it is, not we're going to dial it down and make it palatable for anybody, or we're going to make it seem nice, or we're going to promote it as a unity event. We have got to stop doing that. We got to stop doing it. It is Juneteenth. It is about the last state, when the last group of people received news that enslavement was over. It was a hard day. Nobody tries to make other holidays palatable that are cultural. So we've got to stop doing that as well with ours, or we will continue to feel that Black history has to be, nicely told when it was a gruesome experience. We will continue to pretend that Black history has to be nicely told when it was a gruesome experience. I've made mention of this before. If you had the chance to go back and watch the other day, I did a lecture on on Cicely Tyson's book, Just As I Am, and I talked about some of the key points. But I also talked to you guys about one of the books I'm reading right now. Jen Buck put me on this book. I tune into when I can, because I've been a little busy. I tune into a group called White Women for Reparations, where they have some very candid conversations just about learning about what enslavement was like in this country, what financial damage has been done for the Black community, and what kind of things need to be done going forward. That's a conversation, and we are listening to a book called The Half Has Never Been Told. I ended up buying the book because I had never heard of it until then. So I ended up buying the book because I wanted to do a close read for myself, because some of these stories in here are just very gruesome, but very important for us to know. And so the reason that I'm saying those things is because the information is available. We cannot continue to disregard it, and we cannot do a dishonor to Juneteenth. It took all these years for Juneteenth to finally be acknowledged as a federal holiday. Let us not water it down by trying to make it seem acceptable to other people whenever it was finally deemed acceptable for us. You understand what I'm saying? People will respect you for who you are. And we will never be able to this is the thing we have got to be honest about. We'll have these conversations about wanting to make progress, about wanting diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then we water down the conversations, or we back down from really having accountability. But if we do not have these conversations, and if we do not create a sense of accountability, then there's not going to be any real change. There's not going to be any change. If we keep backing down from it, there's not going to be a change. We can't keep saying we want diversity. Diversity is not, we just had a sprinkle of folks here. Diversity is not, we added Black folks in with white folks. That's not what diversity is. Diversity is a representation of every race and culture that is present in your community. In Monroe in particular, I remember we did, when I worked at Washita, and this is still one of my most treasured experiences. We did a soul food festival, and I had been wanting to do a soul food festival for a long time. And I was so happy that I finally had the chance to do a soul food festival. And when we hosted that soul food festival, we did not limit that festival to Black students. That soul food festival was open to, initially, it was open to students that were of the teachers who were organizing it. Well, we started getting kids from all over the school who were interested in participating, and we didn't want to turn any kids down. And so the only thing they had to do was they had to bring a dish. They had to bring what they considered to be a traditional, like Southern or soul food dish. So either one, Southern or soul food dish. And you guys, we literally had Black kids, white kids, Asian kids, Hispanic kids. Every single kid in that school was welcome to attend, and we had over 100 dishes for that festival. And we did that for Black History Month. We had over 100 dishes. And this was the thing. Many people were, one of the things I kept hearing was whether or not parents would be okay with something like this. Parents were the ones who brought the dishes up for their kids and were eager to participate. They were so eager to come and show off some of their family's traditions and some of the foods. And not one time did we take away from saying that it was part of the Black History Month celebration. And actually, we had some students who did Black History based performances and things like that. Not one time did we take away from that part of the conversation. But we extended it to every child in the school, and we had over 100 dishes. And I'm telling you guys, we lost count of how many students came in to participate, and they had so much fun. We had music, we had poetry, we had performances, we had food. The kids said their grace together. They sat down at the table together. Seeing our kids of all different races and colors sitting down, eating together, sharing food. And you guys, and I'm telling you, it was so funny because we had stuff like somebody's parents had bought, like actually bought coon, like raccoon. We had raccoon, we had yams, we had greens, we had real life soul food. Somebody's parents had brought rabbit. And so the kids were willing to try everything that we had there. So what I'm saying to you is this. When we continue to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, you have to show up authentically. And let me tell you something. I'm going to go ahead and speak some real facts. I know that this Jamie that people are getting to see here, loud, proud, and unrestrained, is a bit uncomfortable. But you guys just aren't used to seeing me streaming as frequently as I do. Because if you've ever been my student, if you've ever heard me speak at an event, if you've ever read my poetry, if you've ever been to any of my poetry shows, you know that I speak very unequivocally about issues that relate to society, and I'm very passionate about telling the stories of my people. If you read my books, you know what my books are all about. Black women, white women, women in general. But in particular, I place a lot of emphasis on telling Black stories and Black culture, and I refuse to reduce that for anybody. And in showing up that way, it has opened me up to connect with so many people. You guys, I remember when I wrote tracts, and I'm sharing this with you guys for a reason, because it's really important in regards to talking about the authenticity of Juneteenth. And I'm gonna read some of these comments in a minute. But I remember when I wrote Trek, and I was very nervous because I wanted Trek to be a book that was about the Black experience, but would reach across all types of audiences, Black people, white people, Asian people. I really wanted folks to tap into what is really about the journey of Black women, and how it involves all of us as men and women. And several of my classmates from my hometown who were white reached out to me and began sharing stories with me about their families, stories I didn't know, stories about why their relationships changed in regards to their cultural beliefs versus their family's cultural beliefs, stories about families that I thought everybody was nice and cool and there was no racism, and there were racist people in the family who had certain rules on what you could and could not do. I had somebody who reached out to me and told me the story about how they were one of the people where their family did not allow black folks in their house. I've heard that story more than once. And so these are not folks who look like me, but people who say, for the first time, I can tell this story and I need to get this off my chest because this is something that I am seeking to change for my family. But I've had to harbor this for a long time. So this is why the authenticity of Juneteenth is important. This is why accountability is important, because there are people who need to hear what you have to say. And I will say this loudly and proudly. There is a gift that Black people possess for healing and loving and compassion. There's a gift that Black people possess for healing and loving and compassion. I am not saying that you have an obligation to use that gift. I am not saying that you have to exhaust yourself in using that gift. I'm saying that that's just who we are. And that is one of the most unique things about us. Every time I think about my grandmother, who was a caretaker for white children and her own children, and for me, when I think about the times I shown up at my friends' houses out in the country and I've been fed. I remember the time when I first moved to Northeast Louisiana, and my friend Jeremy would tell you this story, and I was having a really hard time just adjusting, and I was missing Baton Rouge, and I was homesick, and I went down to Winsboro, Louisiana, and I climbed up in the bed, and his mom fixed me a plate of food, and he brought me a glass of wine, and they turned on the TV, and I spent 2 days laying in that bed just being cared for. And these were not my people. There is a gift that Black people possess that we just have it. And so we are at a place now where, in order for this world to really be blessed with peace, in order for this world to really be blessed with unity, this world will have to acknowledge the contributions that Black people have made educationally, intellectually, and in the way that we care, support, and just exude love for each other. It's just what we do. It's how our communities are just intermingled. And when you go places all over the world, you guys, one of the most unique things I've been doing on TikTok is I've been following Black people from all over the world. So I love following Black Irish people, Black English people, Black Australians. I found a Black girl that's been she was born and raised in, I think, China. And so I've been following them to listen to them talk about their cultural experiences. We have been taught for so long that the experiences we have in America as Black people, oh, they're so different from Black folks here, or they're not Black folks there. We are all interconnected in the pain we've gone through. As I sit in on workshops. I'm on LinkedIn, tuning in to groups. I'm in Clubhouse, tuning in to conversations. I'm logging in the workshops, and I'm talking to people internationally. And when we talk about race, culture, diversity, the stories are the same. The trauma is the same. And we've been talking about what unity looks like. The problem is because people have continued to divide us because they don't want us to know how powerful our stories are from a unified front. But until this country is really, really in a place to accept the Black story and let us deal with the pain that we have experienced, that's a whole different thing, because you guys already know I've been talking about the trauma workshop of the Black experience, right? But Juneteenth is a big part of that. That's part one, right? Of us really being able to say, let us honor our ancestors. and what they went through. Let us pay homage to them for their sacrifice. Let us thank them for their stories. Let us pray for them. I am writing a poem right now about oak trees because I just continue to see the image of oak trees in books. So I started writing a poem about it, right? So I've started composing this piece about it. I wrote a Juneteenth poem 2 years ago. I'm going to try to record it for you all this year. I'm working on recording it tomorrow, and I'll be posting it live for the first time. But it's written in one of my attempts to write in enslaved vernacular. So I've been working on that. I still have work to do, but I'm going to produce it for you guys. But let us not dishonor our people by watering down their stories. Let us not minimize the trauma they went through for us by minimizing their stories to make other people feel comfortable, to make it palatable. People will respect you. It may not be comfortable. Change is not comfortable. Hearing these stories, they're not comfortable. Look, it's not comfortable for me. There's a story that I'm getting ready to share. I've been telling it on TikTok for the past few days. It's actually about Monroe, Louisiana. The 1960 killing shooting of four black men. 3 of them died. 1 ran away. Miss Turner is on here. Miss Turner, if you know anything about this, I really need to talk to you on the phone as soon as possible. I've been researching this story. The LSU Manship School is trying to access or has accessed the FBI files on this story. They're working to access FBI files on other stories. The man, Robert Fuller, who killed these men, was actually in the KKK, led the KKK, lived right here, and he wrote a book about it. You want to know why we cannot break curses and really bring communities together? Because we need to grieve over these stories. And we need to let justice be done of telling the stories of people who have suffered. The man who left this community, the one man who survived that, or no, it was 2 of them, one of them who didn't get shot. He left this community. That man is still alive. As of May 10th, 2022, LSU published this story. I'll be putting all of that information out for you guys today. And I hope that you guys will share this, especially all over Louisiana, because for people who have not read it, you need to know. This is why Black stories have to be told unfiltered. This is why we cannot continue to let Juneteenth and other Black holidays be minimized for the comfort of others. If we really want to see what diversity and inclusion look like, let those stories be told in their full capacity. And if they're uncomfortable, so let it be. Discomfort is a part of that process. A part of that process. But it's how you make real change happen. I'm going to read these comments, you guys. Of course, I went over the 30 minutes. I'm going to read the comments, do some feedback, and I'm going to close back because I did say I wouldn't keep y'all very long today. Miss Fanyana says, okay, so she was talking about the creatives. They're all females as well, which makes absolutely no sense considering their platform is based off Black culture. Elvis Presley did the exact same thing. And of course, we know this, right? We have actually heard Little Richard share this story multiple times. We heard Ray Charles and the infamous laugh he gave whenever Elvis was brought up. So we know this, right? And of course, if we really want to dig into it, the reason that a lot of it is, white females is that ties into sexuality, right? And what is not only the American standard of beauty, but what we find is actually an international standard of beauty. We go to other countries and other countries still have men and women that aspire to be white beauty. So white and European beauty has become an international or is an international standard that people aspire to. So when people see it on the internet, on these social media sites where you make money off of views, likes, comments, and reactions, right? then you add profit to them because they are the standard of beauty. So that what you say is very important. Okay. Right. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. How dare we take from the truth to make it fit their narrative? Exactly. That's the scary part about it, right? Is that because it's become a national or federal holiday, right? Um, my hope is that we as a people will continue to stand together on ensuring that the story of our people is told authentically at all times. At all times. Exactly. The fact that God wants justice, diversity, and equity. Exactly. Look. People have used the Bible to do so many things except for be fair and honest. And the Bible is all about fairness and honesty. Even if you pull out all the stories, and I tell people all the time, and sometimes folks disagree with me on this, but this is the truth. I said, I don't spend as much of my time reading Bible stories as I do reading the Bible's word. What is it Jesus had to say? What is it God had to say about how I should conduct myself and live daily? That's straight black and white. And if we as a people, we're in the Bible Belt, right? So if we're here in the Bible Belt, if we're in these very religious communities, right? And we keep talking about the Bible and we want to keep talking about God, right? Justice, diversity, and equity, inclusion. That's all Bible based. Okay. So that's how, right? That's how it's supposed to be. Everybody celebrate the festival together. Yes, show up authentically. Absolutely. Absolutely. Nobody tries to water down the 4th of July. They come out, baby, they come out with those flags, those red, white, and blue flags. Let me tell you something, and I told you guys that story before, and I'm proud to be an American. Beers, koozies, hot dogs, hamburgers, American flag t-shirts everywhere. Nobody tries to water that down, right? So nobody else, exactly. You're exactly right. Show up authentically. Yes, I believe it. Absolutely. Keep telling Black stories and talking about Black stories. Your voice is needed. Thank you so much. Nia, don't give me my feelings. Thank you. It is my passion. It is my calling. It's what I've been doing since I was a child, right? And I know that it's exactly what God has called me to do. And it was just the other week where I can't remember some story that came out in the news or media. And I used to have very candid conversations, especially when I worked in predominantly Black schools. I used to have a lot of candid conversations with my students about just understanding how the world's going to be for you, and really just, out of my desire to have my young Black males to understand, I just want you to get a clear focus on what you want and how you want to do it. And I want you to go for that thing, because this is going to be a tough place for you. And one of my students chopped in, and he's a grown man, y'all. He is probably close to 30. And he was like, Miss Mays, you always told us, you always kept it real with us about, how life is and the kind of challenges we can face in this world. He was like, I remember those things you told us. And so I think it's important. It's important. It's just that you give people their power. And Black people, we've had our power taken from us for so long. And we just don't deserve to have it taken from us anymore. We just don't. We don't. Thank you, Miss Turner. That is who I've always known you to be, a whole Black, fully grown woman, unapologetically you. Thank you so much. I try. And I marvel at women like you who have been before me. And who have continued to knock down these doors in order for me to be in a space today where I can use my voice authentically the way I do without as much strife. And I still do go through a lot of challenges, but I know I go through a lot less challenges because other women have come before me, other Black women especially. Yes, right, Miss Kathy. Yes, absolutely. I know you're talking about when I was talking about how we as Black people have these gifts of caring and consoling, and that's just right. And we're not obligated. There was a time whenever our gifts were obligated to others, right? as Black people, we had no rights. We didn't have the ability to say what we didn't want to do or what we weren't going to do. We have the right now to choose, right? It's still our gift. And I feel that a lot more people would be more open to letting their gifts flow freely if they felt their voices were not restricted, if they felt their stories were not prohibited from being heard. So, absolutely, Miss Kathy, thank you. Miss Patricia, on our worst day, we are forgiving and caring people in spite of. We have forgiven a lot in this country, across this world. We really, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And when I think about the courage of older Black people who lived during the Jim Crow era, just because it was scary, and I was having this story, I was like, do you realize that Black people that lived during the Jim Crow era, like you literally, in many cases, especially depending on where you live, you needed to be in the house. Like we make jokes about the street lights coming on, but sometimes I wonder if the joke about the street lights coming on was that Black people really didn't need to be outside after dark because you were subject to be terrorized by white people. And so when I think about our parents and grandparents who went through that, and we're still forgiving and merciful and kind, and still taking care of the kids of people who had the power to have them hanged at the drop of a hat or killed at the drop of a hat, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And that's why I really want us to see ourselves through the light. When people ask me questions like, well, how do you know God is calling you to do this kind of work? I said, name one time that Jesus was not authentically himself. Name one time that Jesus did not keep it real. Name what God calls us to love ourselves. God calls us to live in the fullness thereof. The Bible says that. And the image that God showed me from my own people was that there are so many of my brothers and sisters who need to be free from generational pain, who don't know their stories, who don't know their identities. And if they knew who they were, they could really live in freedom. That's what God told me. And when he told me that, I never looked back. And I haven't had to look back since then. So I don't have to question like what, how my call has been solidified for me. I've known. And I can tell you that it's what changed and saved my life as a child. Learning my identity, I remember when I realized how amazingly blessed I was to be a Black woman. I was like, I have the same skin as Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, I can talk about the same kind of stuff that he does. Like, this is what our people have been through, and we're still strong and courageous. And then I was reading these poems by Dr. Maya Angelou, and I was like, you mean I can write with that same kind of like spirit? And everybody doesn't have that gift because you can't understand it. You haven't had to live in it. You haven't had to go through it or see it. I was like, you mean to tell me that I'm part of this kind of lineage of people? It was life altering for me as a child to understand identity. And that's why it's so important. Absolutely. Let me see. I love hearing the Black experience from all over the world. I do too. I really do too. And I wish I had a list of people I could give you guys to follow. I'm so sorry. I'll give you some. I'll give you some really great people to follow because there are some good people to follow from all over the world. I was trying to see if some would pop right up on my LinkedIn. Okay. So if you're on LinkedIn, there's a woman named Future Kane. She is English. I think she's English. Or was she English? Follow her anyway. Because she works a lot internationally. So Future Kane, like the rapper Future. She's really, really awesome. So follow her. And I'll give you guys some more later because I have some other really great people I'm connected with. And Future does some great she does some great conversations that I think you'll like. But she's one of them. And then I'll give you guys some other people later that I follow who are really, really doing some great international conversations on race and culture that I think you'll like. Those trees represent generations, generations, stories, so much. Absolutely. It's taken me a while to write that poem because it's very emotional, but I really cannot wait to be able to share it. Hey, Miss Connie. Now, Miss Connie was out here doing her thing, but I can't wait. Um, Jamie Mays, black people outside of Texas seem more comfortable celebrating Juneteenth now that it's a federal holiday. Facts. Facts. I fully agree with you, Miss Connie. I agree. I agree. I agree. That's why I hope this conversation is one that works for people from all races and cultures, including our people who do not feel comfortable. I absolutely agree. Prior to the last few years, Juneteenth was not as popular. Absolutely. I enjoyed this. Thank you, friend. I'm so glad you tuned in. Hey, Ursula, glad to see you. Glad to see you. Thank you for being the person you are and for keeping everything as real as it should be. Miss Yvonne, I appreciate it so much. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope this conversation was meaningful. There are two things I want you to put on your calendar. Tomorrow, and I'm going to have the flyer up this evening. Lee 3 and Miss Funyana Live will be here at the house cooking in the kitchen for Juneteenth. Y'all, Miss Funyana Live makes, I'm not playing, the best hot water cornbread and greens. It is amazing, 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 amazing. It's so good. So she is actually going to come here and she will be in the kitchen with Lee 3 doing a Juneteenth meal. Lee 3 is so excited because he's been wanting to do another soul food meal. So the two of them will be in the kitchen tomorrow going at it, and you know she is off the chain. So Miss Louisiana Hot Funyana Live will be here tomorrow with Lee 3. They will be cooking a Juneteenth meal. On Friday morning, I will have a flyer up inviting you all to tune in for a Juneteenth prayer, where I will do a prayer for the ancestors and just a moment of reflection. And I invite you to tune in and invite others to tune in, and I'll stream it live this same way. And I will share with you basically the same type of prayer and thought process that I do. It won't last but about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we will send well wishes to everyone to have an enjoyable weekend, but to remember that we are acknowledging the story of our ancestors in celebrating Juneteenth. Take care of yourselves and have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.